Hello everyone and welcome back to another movie review. Today I'll be reviewing Quest for Fire from 1981, directed by Jean-Jacques Annaud. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And this is certainly an interesting movie, so let's get right into it. And one quick note, I know this is a kind of random review for a very random movie, but there's not really many new movies coming out, and I wanted to just get uploading videos just to try to figure this out, so I hope you enjoy. To quickly summarize the plot without giving away any spoilers, this movie takes place in the prehistoric era with early evolved humans, and in a world where they're searching for fire, and fire is power, and if you don't have fire, then you'll go to extreme lengths to get it. So the plot is essentially a quest for fire. We follow three characters who go on essentially an adventure where they are searching the undeveloped world for it. So in this movie, we get to see saber-toothed mammoths and other tribes, and how our three characters that we're following interact with these obstacles as they search for fire to bring it back to their main tribe. And probably the most unique thing about this movie is that it is spoken entirely in a made-up language that they made up for the movie. So you don't really know what they're saying, but I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, as I'll get to in a second. So now let's look at what this movie did well. As I mentioned with the language, I felt that it added to this movie. Not knowing what the characters are saying, it makes you focus more on the world and the story and what's happening to them rather than what they're saying. And I think it's going to make the viewer think more, try to understand the movie better. And overall, I felt, personally for me, that it added to the experience. Another thing I enjoyed about this movie is I thought the setting of the film was great. It takes place in the prehistoric era before developed civilized humans, so the world is largely undeveloped, and it really does a good job at showing that. I believe this film was shot in parts of Africa and Iceland, and maybe even Canada, I'm not sure on that one, but it really made the world believable, and you felt like you were back in this time period with these characters. And overall, I really enjoy movies of characters traveling through a undiscovered world and, the potential of what they could discover. And I think this movie really did a good job showing the vastness of this world or Earth, and the potential that obviously would evolve in human history. As for the performances of this film, I thought everybody did a great job. Obviously, it's all in a made-up language, but I felt all the acting was great. They all really were believable in their characters they played, obviously playing like cavemen type people. The most notable actor in this movie was Ron Perlman from Sons of Anarchy and Hellboy. Obviously, he did this movie long before those. But everybody did a great job. I didn't have any complaints. I thought all the effects in this movie looked good, whether that be the mammoths, there was saber-tooths in the movie, there's the setting, the costume design. I thought everything was great, especially considering that it came out in the early 80s, I'm guessing with a fairly small budget compared to most major Hollywood films. And so I don't really have any complaints. It looked great, it was believable. And the last thing for what this movie did well, in terms of the plot, I thought the story of essentially three people going on a quest for fire, in their adventure, I thought we got a good mix of drama, comedy, action, and even romance at times, as you'll see in the movie. And I think that's a good thing. I really enjoy a well-rounded plot, and this movie had a great one. Alright, so moving on to the negative side of things, overall I really did enjoy this movie, so I couldn't find a whole lot to complain about, so this section is going to be quite short. But the one minor complaint I could come up with about this movie is that I thought the movie as a whole could be boring and slow moving at times, but I can't say that's necessarily a bad thing, but it's not going to be for everyone. The director was trying to have a more realistic approach on history rather than, in modern, or not modern, but in most Hollywood historical films, they're going to add certain fictional elements to make it more exciting, make it more consumable for a broad audience. But this director really goes for the realism here, and so that's why it wasn't as exciting as it could have been. But that didn't necessarily take away from it. It's just a very minor complaint. The only other thing I can think of that I didn't like about this film has nothing to do with the actual movie, but rather with how I had to watch it. I watched it on this DVD version, which worked fine and everything. It's just, since it was a DVD, obviously didn't have the best quality, and particularly I thought this DVD did not look great compared to some other DVDs I've watched. But it'd be really nice if this movie was on Blu-ray or 4K so we could really enjoy it. There's a lot of long panning shots of mountainscapes and all these special effects they use, and it'd be really nice to see them in top-notch quality, as we do have the technology nowadays to do that. So it'd be really cool if at some point in the future we were able to get a upgrade for this movie, as I think it's a great one and it certainly deserves it. And the DVD version I had pretty much no special features. If I look here, you can see that it had 5, and most of those were audio commentaries with the cast and crew, which you probably get a lot in there, but still you want more than what the movie actually gave you. Alright, so moving on to my consensus and score and recommendation of the film. If you can't tell, I absolutely love this movie. I'm a huge fan of historical films, and I think that's a great way to kind of convey history and teach people history, especially if you have a more realistic approach like this movie did. So when I had heard about this film, my expectations were quite high going into it. But I felt this movie very much exceeded my expectations. As for a prehistoric caveman movie, I really enjoyed it. As I mentioned, this movie's trying to be more realistic, and it doesn't add all these, blockbuster action scenes you'll see in a movie like Braveheart or The Patriot or Gladiator. So I thought in this instance, it added to the movie and it made it better, where I don't think that's always the case. For example, if all historical films tried to be 100% accurate, I think pretty much only history buffs would enjoy them. They'd be very boring for someone who's not as interested in history. But as I mentioned, in this case, it worked. It's not going to work in every case. And as for my recommendation of the movie, I would strongly encourage anyone watching this video to go watch the movie right now. I don't know if it's streaming anywhere, but I own the DVD. I bought the DVD off of eBay. That's the only place I could find it. But I think it's an excellent movie. It's not, for me, it just wasn't just for people who like historical movies, but it's very entertaining. It's very interesting. It makes you think a lot. It's really impressive what they did with it to really just try to recreate history in a sense. And it's really an excellent movie on humans thousands of years ago and the quest for fire and the power it holds. However, it is worth noting that this movie is fairly inappropriate. There is a lot of graphic violence throughout the film, and there is full nudity at certain points in the movie, so I wouldn't necessarily recommend it for younger audiences or to watch it as a family, but I still highly recommend it if you have the means to go watch it. And as for the score, I'm going to give this movie a 95 out of 100, which is a pretty high score coming from me, and a B for entertainment. And that will do it for my second movie review on YouTube. I hope you all enjoyed, and if you did, consider hitting the like button, subscribing, and commenting. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.